God puts us in nations, in places, not by mistake, but to do a job. What if we opened our eyes to the needs of our colleagues, of our leaders, of our subordinates, and we were a priest on their behalf? Welcome to the Repurposing Business Podcast. My name is Brett Johnson.
And I'm Lynn Johnson.
And we're going to be talking about how to get our business into God's business. Our subtext is Let My Business Go, and we'll have guests from around the world. So thank you for joining us this week and every week on the Repurposing Business Podcast. Well, this is the Repurposing Business Podcast. Welcome. And today I have Chris Maclellan with me. And Chris is down in Chattanooga. Comes from a famous Chattanooga family, actually, and we are recent additions to Chattanooga, but Chris has been here for generations. Chris, welcome. Good to have you with us today.
Thank you, Brett. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I first heard of the Maclellan Foundation when you guys showed up in my office in Silicon Valley back in about 1999 or 2000, and heard of the good work that you were doing, which has been amazing over the years. And do you want to tell us a little about the foundation, and then we'll move on to the side that you're heading up after that, and tell us a bit about your own journey, Chris?
Sure. Yeah, so the foundation actually dates back to 1945, and I'm actually the fourth generation to serve at the foundation. I was fifth generation to work in the family business, which is an insurance business here in Chattanooga. And so the foundation was pretty traditional up until about the 1980s, I'd say, when my father really got a bigger vision through the Lausanne conference to take the vision more globally. And what's great about our foundation, and if you go to the website, Maclellan.net, there's quite a few resources like the founding Thomas Maclellan, who had a covenant with God when he was 30 years old, 50 years old, and 70 years old. And so we have a lot of documents and inspirational founding documents that kind of direct where the foundation should give, how it should give, and it should be all based on Christian principles. So we have that to work from. But in the late 90s, when we met, that's actually when I was first involved, because we sold the family business and we had to diversify. So I was tasked with writing our investment policy. Back in 1998, it was pretty traditional, traditional equity, bonds, alternatives like hedge funds, real estate, and all the asset allocation that was traditional. And so that's when I first got involved. And that was actually about the same time where we really took our strategy of generosity and branded that called Generous Giving. Yeah. And that organization is a subsidiary that has really done great work in inspiring Christian wealthy philanthropists and people to give more of their time, because God owns it all and we're just stewards of it.
Yeah.
So that has been a big push of ours. But we grant about $25 million a year globally, which includes Chattanooga, of course. And our main missions are evangelism, church planting, leadership development, scripture, prayer, and generosity.
Wonderful.
So yeah. So there you go. That's a quick background.
Yeah. And often I'll bump into somebody and find out what they're doing. They're doing good work. And we'll find that you guys are somewhere in the background, not with a lot of flash and so forth, but supporting them. And that's extended now to businesses that are wanting to make a difference. And I guess you've picked up that whole portfolio of impact investing. And what was the journey into impact investing, Chris? How did that happen? And how did that diversification or that development come about?
Sure. As I mentioned, we had a traditional investment philosophy. And about 8 years ago, we kept hearing about Christian impact investing, and Henry Kasner was starting his first fund, Sovereign's Wealth Fund, and we frankly said, we always wanted to make as much money as we could from the investment so we could give away as much as possible. Well, at that time, we didn't have in our investment philosophy that we could do impact investing, which at the time we thought was, not going to make as much of a financial return.
Yeah.
But so I sort of challenged that notion and did some research, and I really thought we could accomplish our mission and make the same financial return on our investments as our traditional portfolio. So the trustees, the board members of the foundation went for it, and we dipped our toes in the water and started investing in Christian entrepreneurs and making loans to Christian organizations at an interest rate, which our hurdle rate on the traditional investments was 8%. That way we could give away 6-7% and pay our expenses. So that was sort of our hurdle rate, and actually we feel like we've met and surpassed that.
Yeah,
and we've kind of raised our expectations higher because of the returns, but also the spiritual impact is hard to measure, but it's definitely has a big impact that aligns with, we call it mission related investing, because our investments align with the mission of our foundation, which I just mentioned a few minutes ago.
Right. Yeah. So it must have been a bit scary getting into this in the beginning, because you're taking some of the foundation's hard-earned assets and you're risking them on these, I suppose, sometimes wild and woolly Christian ideas that are going to change the world, but you don't know whether you're going to get your money back, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's very true. It made me sort of nervous at first, and the trustees took a big risk, I guess, but it really was what we're called to do. So, yeah, and we started sort of small and with a pretty tight guardrail, and the more we invested, the more we felt comfortable, the more we went with larger investments.
Yeah,
and it's worked out fairly well. We're probably at about 12% of our total corpus is invested in that area, and so we will probably see that grow more. But we took our liquid assets, our other at corpus, and we followed a biblically responsible investing method with that starting about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's worked out well as well. So now we think we're pretty much fully invested in a faith-driven investor model.
Yeah.
Now that we're feeling good about.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So the biblically responsible investing, it's fantastic. At least you know that somebody is providing the screens, the filters, making sure that the bad stuff is out, and you've got a pretty clean investment portfolio. So somebody's not going to stand up at a meeting and say, you're funding slave trading in West Africa or abortion drugs. Yeah. I know sometimes do you think we get criticized for having these litmus test things like abortion, drugs, whatever it might be, and we don't think broadly enough? Or are you seeing with your impact investing, actually there's quite an array of impacts that are actually taking place? What are you seeing there?
Yeah, when we first started, it was slim pickings. It was really tough to find great deals. And on the biblically responsible investing side of the public equities, it was all about negative screens. But now there's so much positive options out there with like Eventide funds and Timothy funds and all these organizations that not only screen out the bad, but they screen in the good. Companies with positive family values and making a difference in their employees, their customers in a positive way. So it's not just the negative. And on the deal side, there's so many good, strong funds now that you can invest in that diversify your investments so you're not stuck in one investment. But they also have, good, strong Christian entrepreneurs and lots of deals in them that you can not only learn from the deals, but sometimes they have SPVs, sidecar investments, where you can actually invest in single deals that are doing well. Yeah. And so that's how we generated a lot of our pipeline is through funds. through great organizations like Praxis and the Lions Den, Oceans Accelerator, Ambassadors and Impact Network, and organizations like that. So the whole ecosystem has really become much, much stronger.
Yeah, it certainly has. And that's been a wonderful development. And I would say also, and this might even be part of the outcome of generous giving and other things you've been involved in, but there's a much broader array of people who might be investing smaller amounts. You know, they're not the $100 million, $1 billion deals all the time, but people with a passion and a heart, and it's $1 million there and $5 million there. And seems to be a really good growing ecosystem, as you say, which is wonderful. So thanks to you and the Maclellan Foundation and extended family for your role in nurturing some of that thinking, because I think for some of the mainstream funds, it just takes somebody to come along and say, we're looking for this kind of investment, for them to begin to say, okay, perhaps we need to get into that.
Right. Yeah. Well, you know, there's a lot of people involved. It's not just us. You know, if you go to a Lions Den or a faith-driven investor conference, there's hundreds and hundreds of people. Yeah. So it's really a great, fun movement that's coming to fruition. So,
yeah, that is wonderful. Now let's chat a little bit about impact, because I think sometimes when your entrepreneur is thinking, okay, do I get a conventional VC investor who's going to want 30% of the company? Then I've got just project type financing. And then I've got this impact investing where I can show a mixed return, both a spiritual impact, a societal impact, solving a problem. How well developed is the thinking of the entrepreneurs who are coming to you? And if you could give some advice to say, okay, I hear your story, but we'd like to see more of this and less of that. What patterns have you seen, Chris?
Yeah. So, you know, a first-time entrepreneur really needs to understand, if they're going to promote an impact, Christian impact investment, or their company is going to adopt that, they really need to study it and understand, you know, what that really means, you know, from a spiritual standpoint. Because we have invested in some companies and we've been a little disappointed by, you know, the different understanding, their understanding and our understanding of what impact is. Yeah. And with those entrepreneurs, we like to work with them to help them develop their spiritual impact. And, you know, I don't think they should be afraid to hire somebody to actually come in and consult, or hire a chaplain, you know, hire someone and put some money toward that investment and bring in somebody that can really help them define, align, you know, and develop their spiritual impact, as well as report on it. And the investor can really understand what their impact is and how they measure it. But a lot of entrepreneurs have had multiple companies before, and they really have been through that experience and understand that side of it. So, I
like your point about allocating some resources to the measurement, because I know in the nonprofit world sometimes, you know, one of the countries we were dealing in, USAID came in, the US government, and said, look, we'll fund you for 2 years, but you have to report back after 1 year. They funded 20 organizations and one of them came back with a report. You know, so they just took the money and ran for the first year. And it wasn't super onerous reporting. It was just pretty basic stuff. But in the nonprofit world, there seems to be a bit of an allergy towards just solid metrics. And then the business people understand profit and loss, cash flow, products, etc., but they just haven't expanded their thinking to think about maybe softer forms or different forms of impact. And so when you're going through a funding process, do you go back and forth with them to quiz them on this, to expand their thinking and see if there's alignment? Is that what you do, Chris?
Yeah, we really do. We do that on the grant side. We've done that for so long that we always have before they can submit a new grant, they have to do a report on the last grant we gave them and how it worked out compared to the goals that they had for that grant. So same on the investing side. You know, we really challenge our teams to bring measurements, and we give them a scale, but they can use whatever measurement system they have. But our scale is kind of a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the lowest, which is Christian entrepreneur, applying Christian principles in the business, and up to a 5, which is really a Christian entrepreneur with a really strong mandate on either a Christian product or service, or a delivery of what they see is what generating the income, but also impacting across the whole array of their customers, their suppliers, their investors, everybody affected by the impact. So,
So Chris, what are some of the mistakes that you've seen when people come to you with, for example, their term sheet, and they say, okay, we want an investment impact, and here's the terms? It seems to me that the thesis of this podcast series is when capital meets eternity. And from Silicon Valley, where I lived, as you know, for 30 plus years, it's when capital meets an exit strategy. It's either we're going to IPO, we're going to sell, we're going to get bought out, or we're going to crash in 3 years, whatever it might be. And what would you as an investor like to see that's different about this traditional, either, get to the moon or you flame out philosophy?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that what we've invested in 87 companies, either 87 different investments. Some of those are follow-on investments. So that's a lot of investments, and we have a fairly small team of 3 here. So we learned fairly early on that we can't hold hands with, from the early stage seed investment with an entrepreneur that, is inexperienced. So we made a few mistakes early in investing too early in businesses. So now we're more focused on a company that needs growth capital, that has sales and revenue that's proven, and they need to, grow or start a new plant or whatnot. So while we don't mind taking a board seat, we really like to partner with funds that identify companies, and we're not the lead investor. We like to be a co-lead or a sizable portion after the lead, but and we really look for companies that have a potential to, it doesn't matter. We don't really care if they don't want to IPO, but if they don't have an exit, it's hard for us to continue to redeploy our capital with other businesses. So we do like to have some sort of an option, whether it's they buy out, us at some point in the future for a predefined valuation, or, because if an entrepreneur was to sell to a company that wasn't aligned or IPO, there's different mandates that they have to, apply, and they might not be able to continue their mission and their spiritual impact as they originally intended. So, it's complicated. That's a good question, and we've had all kinds of different exits and different, ways that we've been able to take the financial return, and we've always steered those companies to continue the spiritual impact as much as they can.
You find there's a bit of a conflict between somebody saying, this is my life work, my calling, and here's my exit plan. How have you helped them reconcile that?
Yeah, so I would say that, it just varies on the, it depends on the entrepreneur. Some of them are serial entrepreneurs that, they're great at starting something, and they have to have a different team come along. They want to go start something else, which is great. So we encourage that. But, generally they have the intention of wanting to develop the team that can continue the spiritual and impact.
Yeah. So Chris, as an investor, you have a mindset, it seems, of capital has to flow. You want it out, but you don't want it gone forever. And I mean, you've done that happily for decades on the philanthropic side. You know, you've done that. But here with the impact investing, you want to get it back in your hand so you can at least be reconsidering redeployment back into the same entity or another one. So there's this concept of the flow of capital that you're attuned to. And so do you structure some of your deals to say, okay, return of capital is a key thing and then share of profits on top of that? So you stay involved from a profit sharing perspective, but you've got your capital back so you can flow it?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it also comes down to asset allocation because, you know, we give away more like 8 or 9% of our corpus every year. So, you know, we really have to have some liquid investments. And then on the MRI side, the Christian impact side, it's more like private equity. So we have to, you know, expect that it'll take, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years to have a company, you know, have an exit. But in the meantime, it's great to get distributions and dividends from companies that have done well and are not exited, but at least we're getting the cash flow that we can apply to the grant side. Yeah.
So, Chris, do you use the term patient capital much in your investment meetings and your conversations?
Honestly, no, but I think I understand the term because so many of the deals these days are just like other private equity investments, whether they're funds or individual deals. I mean, you know, it takes a while to build a company to fruition. So, I mean, I think we are patient, and you know, we are strong advocates for our entrepreneurs, and we don't want to pull the rug out from under them because we're impatient or anything like that. So they have done a lot of follow-on capital to help companies get to where they want to be.
Have you found many instances where an entrepreneur will say, look, we're not getting the returns you want, but we're having an awesome spiritual return. You know, tons of people are coming to know Jesus, or we're educating so many people, or we're solving so many problems. I don't want to say as an excuse, but just as a matter of fact, that's the way it is. And how do you deal with those situations?
Yeah, we have had a few cases like that. And, you know, we in some cases have just said, look, you know, it's probably not a fit. Yeah. You know, we're considering this a write-off. Yeah. We love the fact that you are making an impact in a, you know, whatever Muslim country or whatnot. And the business plan didn't work out. And, you know, we love what you're doing. Why don't you, you know, just focus on it like it's a nonprofit or something. Yeah. But that's the exception, not the rule. Yeah. And you know, that it is what it is. Most companies that are in that situation have said, look, we're going to get your money back one way or another, somehow or another. And they really, some of them have pivoted, and we fully expect to get 100% plus, you know, a return of capital to in addition. So, yeah.
Chris, I love the emphasis on growth capital. I remember many years ago when we started taking teams into South Africa in 2003, I sat with quite a well-known VC in Silicon Valley, and he said to me, Brett, don't do startups. He said, I do it as a living. I look at 1,000 business plans a month, or 500 a month, I think he said at that stage. I fund 10 out of 1,000, and 7 of them failed. You know, he said, and I do this for a living. I have a team. I have analysts. Don't do it. It's just too much work. And so we focused on mid-market companies is what we decided to do with growth potential. And I think it's an underserved market from a capital perspective because, you know, on the different countries, continents where we operate, there's a lot of good businesses in South Africa that could do fabulously in the rest of Africa if they just replicated out what they had. Sure. And I love the idea of growth capital that puts it in people's minds that, you know, I could have 5, 10, 20 of my current factories, locations, businesses up into the continent. And so I love the fact that you've got that emphasis.
Yeah. And it's, not just in other countries, but here in the U.S., I can think of one company we invested in, and they had one location, and they serve amputees.
Yeah.
So they are, at a point in someone's life when they had a limb amputated. And that's a tough spot to be in. So the impact they can have spiritually and on that person's life by delivering, a solution to their, like whether it's blades or arm or whatever, they just have an incredible impact. And so now we've helped them grow to 7 or 8 locations, I believe it is. So we love being able to do that. And once someone has a strong business plan that can be franchised or grown internally, it's fun to watch that happen.
Mm. Chris, have you got much involved in, you see something working in the US and you say, there's a great market for this in India. We know because we've been funding Bible distribution in India, or we've been doing this. And so there's a gap in another market for what you have. Have you been involved much in that?
Yeah, we have. I can think of one example. So we have mission-related investing, and then the granting. Well, in between, we have what we call sustainability grants.
Yeah.
And so these are investments with lower returns, like 2, 3, 4%.
Yeah.
And we actually made an investment in a group in Ghana, I believe, and they were distributing the African Study Bible, and they were so successful they didn't have enough money to grow. So we actually loaned them money so that they could sell more Bibles, African Study Bibles, and give us a 2 or 3% return. And how do you beat that? I mean, that's a great experience.
Yeah. And I have a copy of one of those Bibles, by the way. Yeah.
You did? Okay.
I do.
Oasis International, I believe, is the name of it.
Yes. Yes, correct. It's fascinating, with African stories and it's wonderful. It's wonderful. Yeah. Perhaps we need to do one of those for business people, Chris.
Yeah. We have I'll just give you one more example. We invested real early on, I think in 2014, with 3 Google entrepreneurs that left Google and wanted to start a prayer app. Oh, yeah. So we first granted and then we invested in this prayer app called Abide, which is, I think, one of the top, if you do Google searches, Abide prayer app. And we've invested in another similar app, and taking those from US to now, like Brazil's one of the top markets, and of course other languages. That's pretty cool to see too.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. I've certainly met the folks from Abide, and I've used the app from time to time. So now that's good to see. Other ones that you've been excited about where you say to yourself, I'm not sure of the impact, but one day when I get to heaven, I want to find out what impact did we really get out of that. Any others that have caught your interest? Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think another early on investment we made in Seiko, SSEKO. Liz and Ben, Liz had the, first vision before they even married, but she was in Uganda, I believe, and she met a lot of women that would go through high school and couldn't afford college. They go back home and they lost their ability to go to college. So she would hire them in high school and after high school to make clothing, garments, and shoes and women's apparel and accessories. And she would actually pay them enough so that they could afford college.
Yeah.
Be able to go and graduate from college. And then they, send the items to the US and sell them in retailers, and eventually became a multi-level marketing with doing Facebook and live trunk shows. And they've just had an incredible impact, both on the people that are distributing and selling their products and on the women in Africa. And I think I can see the impact easily, but it will be nice to get to heaven and meet some of the women entrepreneurs and people that have been impacted by that. In a real positive way.
Yeah. So, Chris, you've traveled the world, been to different places in your time, seen different things. And do you ever lie awake at night and wonder, I wonder why somebody isn't addressing this problem? Here seems to be a pretty obvious problem. Where are the entrepreneurs who should be going after that particular thing? Is there any problem or cause or issue that's on your heart where you would like to see people tackle that? And this is an out of left field question, but just thinking about that.
Yeah, that's a hard one. I guess to be on the spot and have to answer that one, I'm not sure I have a good answer, but I'm not a visionary per se. So I really, I did lay in bed at night awake thinking about certain customer or company or problem or investment that's not going well. But I mean, we've invested in companies that are trying to solve the hunger problem in Africa with subsistence farming, and trying to develop methods and ways for a farmer that's making $200 on their land and take them to making $10,000 or $20,000. We're doing that in Zimbabwe and Zambia with a guy named Peter Cunningham, who's an amazing African. You may know him, and he has some chicken farms and some other ways that entrepreneurs are in a whole process where they can take their products to market and get fair prices for it, and that whole solution. So that's a big one that in fact the Maclellan Foundation recently visited there and was very impressed, and they really think that could be a solution to Africa's hunger issues.
Yeah, it's hard to overestimate the challenges that, that sounds like an easy problem, but in Zimbabwe, we've got so many challenges. And I met a gentleman or a lady whose husband was doing food processing, but was getting squeezed from the government and other places. So a solution pops up and it gets co-opted by the government for bribes or for whatever reason. And it's not so simple just to overcome the obstacles for these people. And the Farming God's Way or foundational farming that originated in Zimbabwe, just an amazing story. And so those are big problems, still some pretty basic problems that you have. And that's one of the things I like about investing in emerging markets is they are solving real problems. It's not like, how do I get my dry cleaning quicker or not wait so long in line at the restaurant? I mean, they're really solving some real problems, which is, And in terms of there's an entrepreneur out there, they're listening to this and they're thinking, I would really like to explore the expansion of my business through impact investing. You've mentioned come up with a decent business plan and so forth, but what other pieces of advice would you have for somebody who's thinking of going in this direction?
Yeah, there's great accelerator opportunities out there like Praxis, and there's Christian accelerators and non-Christian, but if you can find a good mentor or a good accelerator, a good organization to coach you and test your hypothesis and theories of business, and really maybe put it in a test case environment. And work toward refining the business or the product, the service before raising too much capital. So early seed money, early friends and family round, tested, and then get it to where it's proven and you can go after more institutional capital to that have experience that can come alongside you and invest the money and the time needed to get you to the place you really need to be.
So it's hard with a team of 3 people. As you say, you can't be hand-holding entrepreneur after entrepreneur, business after business. So you rely on those who are doing training, equipping, skills building, filtering of things for you. And as you say, the accelerators are great. The business incubators are great because they offload some of that work for you and make it a much more reasonable investment for you, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and they're not just in the U.S. There's some in Africa, I think specifically in Kenya. Think of what's his name?
The Synapsis guys are doing some work, and this
Synapsis is great.
Yeah,
Yep.
There's actually an incubator. One of the guys who went through our repurposing business training, he's a rocket scientist, was working out at NASA Ames and stuff, and they've gone off, and their business incubator is funded by the Korean government. It's quite interesting, sitting out in Tanzania. There's a lot of incubators down in South Africa. In fact, not just Christian ones. There's Trigger Ventures, for example. They're pulling people together, entrepreneurs, but there's also the big banks. So if you take Barclays Bank, Standard Bank, ABSA, these other banks, they run accelerators in Cape Town, in Johannesburg. They'll get a whole bunch of companies in 13-week process, and then they'll pick the best ones to invest in. I mean, this is just a pretty standard practice.
Yeah.
You know, they give them good coffee, give them conference rooms, give them workspace. These guys rub off on each other, lots of pivoting going on. They just cherry pick the best ones for an investment. So this is pretty standard, and that's happening around the world now.
Thanks for helping me out with that one.
No, that's good. Yeah, and I'm actually just getting involved with some in Southeast Asia, in Vietnam, and places like that, where they're actually using this to come up with solutions and then bridge those into more traditional financing, but getting them over that hurdle, which it's fun to see, and I think works well with the emerging generation. You know, they work pretty fluidly, pretty quickly, and collaboratively, which is wonderful. Yeah. That's great. So what's your hope for the future of impact investing? I know it's gone from fringe to being mainstream now. We've got ESG as a rough form of measurement, even though it's being co-opted by some people. But we have an opportunity to influence that. And the folks at Inspire are doing a great job on that, as well as others. And so what's your hope for the future of impact investing? Where do you see it going, Chris?
Yeah. Well, if you'd asked me that 2 years ago, I would have said it'd be great to have a platform with curated deals, you know, that you could go to and talk to people and look at a lot of deals. And now we have faithdriveninvestor.org, which really has that. And so that's awesome. I guess, you know, just continue to grow the ecosystem, the momentum there, so that, you know, more people can feel confident that, yeah, I have some friends in my town that are investing, like the guys that do in Birmingham at Lions Den have done for years. You know, find other Christian investors in your town, develop, you know, small networks so that you can combine your resources and your due diligence, your funds, so that you can look at more and more deals, and more and more, you know, Christians would, you know, increase their amount of investing in Christian entrepreneurs and Christian impact funds. You know, it'd be great. It would continue to snowball uphill or downhill, so that there's just more activity and more deals and more due diligence and stronger entrepreneurs.
I remember back in 1985, a cousin of mine was running a business. Two of my cousins had a clothing business in Cape Town. They weren't church, they weren't believers, but this cousin said to me, I can't understand why you Christians don't work together. It just made no sense to him. So it's great to see these networks developing. Love what faith-driven investors are doing, and we've actually helped some people get deals on the platform they've got funded. This is something that's working, and it's great to see that marketplace taking place, and I'm sure it'll inspire others around the world as well, even though it is global. So it's good to see that, and it's great to see the development. And so in terms of the marketplaces are there, there's more investors and so forth. So your story to investors would be, take a chance, like allocate more of your portfolio towards faith-driven things, both on the traditional investing, the biblically responsible investing type funds that Inspire is talking about, as well as going, if you're more at the earlier stage, go to the FDI platform, look for deals, look for things. And then even, as you say, just get some friends together. I think it was Kim Tanner, when he was in the UK, originally out of Malaysia, did some of that good stuff in the early days, just Bible study groups, just ask God for a focus. It might be, an issue in Kenya, or it might be an issue in India or something like that, and just pool some money and get behind something that's happening from a biblical perspective. Sounds like those are some of your key pieces, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's like giving, if you're in a church or Bible study with some of your fellow believers, and you're combining to help, give to whatever passion you have. So it's just like that with investing. You can do the same thing with entrepreneurs, Christian entrepreneurs in your city or town, people in your church, and just, give your time and your talents, your resources to growing the kingdom through business as well as through giving.
Yeah. Well, Chris, thank you so much for your time today. It's been wonderful speaking with you. And
thank you, Brett.
Yeah, and
thank you. I look forward to seeing your whole series and learning from all the other people you interviewed. Thank you.
Yeah, we've had some great people on the program, which is wonderful. And thank you so much to your contribution and for your thoughts on impact investing. But actually, as you mentioned, 3 different categories, where you're doing grants, where you're doing the sustainable stuff, which we didn't talk too much about, and the impact investing. And thanks for your leadership in this area. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Brett.